So you look back at this hard time and thank God that this hard time happened that led us to this happy moment.
This is In Good Faith, listening to first-person experiences of faith and belief.
On In Good Faith, it's our privilege to hear stories and accounts from believers told in their own words. Our hope is to listen with an open heart, celebrating the power of faith and belief and what those stories mean to the ones who tell them. I'm speaking today with Shereen Salah, who is an Arabic instructor here at Brigham Young University, originally from Egypt, also a busy mom. We were discussing how many hats that you wear. Shereen, thank you for coming today.
Oh, thank you for having me.
You have been, over time, a translator, a curriculum developer, and I wonder if you tell me just a bit about your background and experience in Egypt.
I graduated from a language school, private school that focused on languages more. So our first language was Arabic, our native language, and then we had to take like a couple languages, which was English and French. And then I graduated from high school and I attended an English language and translation college in Egypt. I started my professional life, I guess, when I was in college. I got like into an internship. Yeah, and I felt lucky that to be the first one among my friends to get like hired because one of this internship ended up with like a full-time job there in Egypt. So as a translator and an administrator in an oil company.
Did your family always really value education? Was languages something you just felt really interested in?
Well, my dad, he used to tell us like, okay, so let me just first tell you that in Egypt, like the education system, that the schools, there's many like different schools. There's public, there's private schools. So usually private schools are more expensive than the public schools. So the private schools require money. My dad was just like an accountant. He's not like very rich, but he chose his battle. He said, I can either save you money in the bank so you can use it later, or I can use this to invest in you and just have you attend private schools and learn a couple languages so you can have a good position in the society later and you can make your own money. So he decided that, that education, this is a great investment in any kids. So that's why we grow up appreciating and knowing that education is the valuable weapon in this world, I guess.
Yes, yeah.
And he himself attended a business school and a law school himself. So he always would advise us to take education is the most important thing in this world, like in this life for us. It's the strength that we have to come, to have in this life, to have a better life, a good life.
I wonder, as far as faith and belief, what was that like for you in your childhood?
Again, I feel like we're influenced. We're influenced more with my dad. Like my mom was religious too, but my dad, we learned the faith from my dad, from my father more, I guess. I remember when I was little, I would just wake up every morning hearing him reciting Quran, which is the holy book, out loud in the house. And you just like every single morning at 5 a.m. in the morning, you would hear the Quran recitation in our house. And he would go every single day to the mosque to pray like the fourth and fifth prayer of the day, which is, the fifth one is really late actually at night. I mean, it's at night. So he would just have it as a habit. I would see him go to these prayers and just every single day until after he retired. So this probably shaped how I see my religion,
And you knew he took it very seriously.
Yes. Yeah, and I always hope that this busy life would give us more chance to be like him. He was very busy, but he managed to find time for the religion, I don't know, I feel like he was even better than us now.
It sounds like a good man.
Yeah, he was.
Was there some point at which you thought, well, I've been taught this, but now I'm at the part where I have to decide what I really believe? What was that like for you?
When I first learned about God was through my parents. It's the same as in any kids, you introduce religion to your kids and it depends on like where you grow up, and I always ask myself now, what if I grew up in different place with like different parents? Probably I'm going to be like LDS or like a Jew or like, because it depends on like where you grow up, right?
Uh-huh.
But when at certain age you start read yourself, school, like, and you grow up, you get like your first religious education from your parent, then school. In Egypt, they teach religion in school to some extent. And most of the time, it's actually aligned with what your parents would teach you. There's nothing different. But when we start growing up, we start read more. And I personally has found out that it's not what my parents taught me, but the society, that there's a mix between the culture and the religion. And this made me like read more to make this distinction between what is religion and what is culture.
Oh, that is such an excellent distinction.
Yeah. And when you read about different culture, different like Muslim country, and they have their own culture, you would have doubts. It's like, okay, so they actually practice religion different than I do. So sometimes so I had to read more and just say, oh, that's not actually religion. This is culture, that it just overlaps. So yes, there's some part that I had to reconsider. There's some part of my religion that I thought it's religion, but it's not. It's actually culture.
Were there particular things, and you'll have to help educate me, but for instance, the 5 pillars of Islam, are those things that you hold on to feel like you're in touch with God, or do you get that from some other personal practice or attitude too?
The 5 pillars of Islam are the core of Islam. So we have as Muslim, like in order to be a Muslim, you have to abide by these 5 pillars, and you cannot compensate that with anything else. It's to be a Muslim, you have to practice and believe in these 5 pillars, and also to believe in all prophets, So there's foundation. There's like core of this religion that all Muslim across like the 1.5 billion Muslims, they have to abide by and follow to be a Muslim.
Those would be the prayers.
The prayer.
Fasting. Giving alms.
Like tithing, the same as tithing in the LDS church. And believe in God and the Prophet Muhammad. So this is the 5 pillars of Islam.
There are different kinds of prayers, I think, in every religion for different people. And some might be prayers that people recite that are traditional. And then there might be personal moments of prayer. And I'm wondering, for you, do you feel like that's a kind of communication, or is that is that even the way you approach prayer?
Yeah. We believe that the closest time to God is when you pray, when you do your 5 prayers. So we feel like this is the closest moment, that you feel like you're so close to God and you can ask for anything. But yes, there's some other time, like at night in my bed, I just like pray to God for something or because it's always like...
It doesn't have to be formal?
No, it doesn't have to be. But I mean, like we feel like when we pray, this is the closest time to God. But also, there's some, because we believe that God He hears us all the time. He listens to our prayers and our deeds and everything. And He feels us. He feels that, yes, like every minute in our, a moment in our life, He's there. He's around us. He sees us, So, no, it doesn't have to be formal, You can just, as I said, I can be at night, like praying for something. So I can just say it like, oh, please God,
I'm smiling because I think me and every other parent is thinking heartfelt prayers in bed, for instance. My child is not home. They're supposed to be home.
Yep.
I hope this is okay. Yeah. All of those prayers that are...
Or you just hope for something, for someone dear to you, or for your country, for everyone. Just, sometimes you just sit and just have this conversation between you and God, and it doesn't have to be formal.
Are there times that you would say, I felt like God was leading me? Now that I look back, I see God was leading me. Or maybe in the moment, I had a prayer and a choice to make, and I felt led. Okay,
so I believe in God choices. Yes, we're free to choose, right? But I feel like God lead us to these choices.
As you consider...
Yeah, when you look back, being here in the U.S., for example, when I look back And I just like, this meant to happen, this meant to happen to meet this particular person, which is my husband, and get married to him and just like be here and see how our future here has become, like it's a good life, and for my kids. So yes, God made choices for us, some like most of, or lead us to make choices, and most of the time it's good for us. Even if sometimes there's something happen in our life and we think, oh, that's so bad. But later, when something good come out of this, you feel like, oh, it's God. Like He led us for this to happen, and then we ended up in this, like happy,
So maybe now you think it's okay.
Yeah, and it's and there's so many stories in my life and in my family's life would we think at like a hard times why this is happening to us, and you just like, because you're in it at that moment, but after that you just, when something better comes and you're just like, whoa, this is God's choice. So you look back at this hard time and thank God that this hard time happened that led us to this happy moments, and I see it a lot in lots of experiences in my life and my family's life.
So then does that make you, when you're in a difficult time, trust that things are going a good direction?
We try. We're human. we trust God. Unconditionally. We trust God and His choices for us, But we're human. We just feel sad at the hard moments. But maybe this is what God makes us feel. Yes.
Interesting.
Because it's the human feeling. This is what God give us, this human feelings, right? Like being sad or happy So maybe in this life, God just want us not to be having everything in this life. We're just like, okay, you need to learn that there's some difficult moments that you need to live to appreciate the good times.
What are the things that bring you the most peace?
Listening to Quran probably, or talking to God, speaking to God at night. This is probably something, or just keep reminding myself that this is God, He's there, He will not He's going to be always there for me. But praying probably and listening to Quran is the most, I feel like this is the most peaceful moments for anyone in any religion, for the believers, or all believers of all religions. Just the peaceful moments and when they get closer to God. Yeah.
So there are daily prayers which can be done personally, or you could go to do that communally as a mosque. What is different on the holy day of the week?
Here?
Or both. Yeah, both here or
I mean, and here's going to take us back to the overlapping with culture and religion. So Friday, which is the holiday,
yes.
The Sabbath for Muslims, it's different. You can just it's the same feeling that you have here as Sunday. We still have a Friday prayer here, and you just feel it inside the mosque. When we go do our special prayer, you just feel it inside the mosque. The speech that were given by the imam or the leader, that is always most of the time directs you towards good things and, address some of the issues Muslims have. It's different in fact that it's holiday, it's off, it's people get ready for this special prayer, and I always see here in the LDS community, how Sunday is just something big in religion, people get ready for it, dress the best of their clothes and just and have this spiritual day. That we have the same on Friday, which is men or women would just wear their best clothes and just go pray, this special prayer to be within the community. So this day brings community together, and this is what all religions are meant to be. We're meant to be like this in any religion.
Yeah, it seems like there is something very important about being with others. And I've wondered.
And it's called Gum'ah. Gum'ah is the gathering. That's the meaning of the Gum'ah prayers. It's the gathering. the word Gum'a coming from Jam'a, which is the plural or like the gathering of people.
And it seems like that also gives us a chance even to know other people's needs and to be able to serve and be able to help.
Yes, absolutely. Yeah. So then you meet with your neighbor, your friends, you just like hear about their like problems, their stories, so yeah, this holiday, this Friday prayer and, ritual that we do, it brings the community together.
You've done something that is difficult for some people. Well, it's always difficult to move and deal in a whole new language, but you've moved to a place where your religion is in a minority here in the U.S. Do you feel like you've had to suffer at all because of that, because you do follow the tenets of your faith, or is that not an issue? Maybe suffer is the wrong word, but are there difficulties?
Oh yeah, absolutely. It's just it's not the same. It's not the same of being in a Muslim country. In Muslim countries, you hear the call for prayer 5 times a day, and this is a challenge for us and for the kids. Just to have like instant reminders, like okay, there is like prayer coming up. You get busy with life and
put an alarm on your iPhone or something.
This is how we handle this. But it's just like the sense of the spiritual feeling that you get hearing the call for prayer from each corner of the city. I don't know if you've been to the Middle East, but it's just so very special, very spiritual. And knowing that everyone around you just like have the same kind of
and
faith.
turning their minds to God all at the same time.
Yes, and it's and they do the same thing. They celebrate the same holidays. Like during Ramadan, for example. This is probably the hardest hardest part being here. It's just like because the months of Ramadan is not only fasting. It's the family, it's the community. It's there's so much going on in this like spiritual month that we don't experience here. We try to create somehow a like similar setting, but it's not always the same. Raising kids in like non-Muslim, environment is a challenge sometimes, But also I have to say like being in Utah is like makes things a little bit easier because the similarities between the LDS church and the Muslim faith is like appreciating family and like the modesty. Like there's so many in common, I personally believe. So it's makes the mission easier on me.
That might be a time moving to a different country where someone might just say, well, this is difficult. I can't keep up. I'll just sort of forget about it. But it seems to me that this has made you more committed.
We try. Mm-hmm. I'm not going to pretend that I'm like, we try. We do our best, or we do what we can do.
Yeah.
We always try. But yes, we are like, and we help our kids to be committed to the religion and have them learn about the religion. And at the same time, we're not isolated from the community. Because part of our religion is to communicate with other cultures and other religions. There's nothing wrong to be different. And that's what we teach our kids. It's not like we're not isolated from the community because we're Muslim or from a different faith. No, we actually like go to the LDS events. Today, I'm invited to a Relief Society dinner, and I'm going.
So this is the gathering of the women's group.
Exactly, and I love it. It's just wonderful, just a bunch of wonderful women, and and when you live in a society that respects religion, regardless of this religion, this makes our life easier. I don't know, I haven't tried to live in different state or different, among other religious group, but I don't think it's going to be easy. Now it's the move. If I decided to move to a different state, for example, that it's not like very religious, I will have to think twice. My husband came before me here, so he knew. Uh-huh. And I was afraid, honestly, to come. And I started all my marriage life here. But he have seen how this like community is, and he told me, just don't worry. You will feel like safe. You'll be freely, practice your religion. And he was right.
What do you think about the fact that there are so many religions and cultures all across the world?
It's diversity. I don't know.
I'm asking you a question no one really has an answer to, but it's fun to hear what you think about it.
What I think about like different religions?
Just that the fact that there are so many.
I don't know, but like here's an issue, and I don't know if you want to... I'm going to tell you this, The problem is every religious group think that we're right, the rest are wrong, right?
Exactly.
That's no in my religion as well. That this is what each church or religion think. We're right, you're wrong, But I came to the conclusion is we're all right. We all worship the same God, but we just worship from different angle. You know what I mean? So it's fine. It's fine to have different religion as long as we all agree that to abide by the good rules, the good deeds that in our religion. You know what I mean?
And those seem to be in common.
Yeah, there's so many in common.
To treat people as you would wish to be treated. All of that.
And when you go deeper in all religion, actually creed and different religion, you would find so much in common than the differences. At the end of the day, as I said, we worship the same God, Maybe the certain religions see God that way, I see it that way, but at the end, it's one God. Or maybe 2 or 3, but still God, I don't want to, so.
Don't want to limit that.
Yeah.
But I think it is interesting, especially if someone gets the chance to travel and see all the good people doing good and being motivated for good by what they believe.
Yeah, it's just, exactly. Use religion to be good, to be a good member in this world. That's all. It doesn't matter which religion you belong to. Yeah.
Have you ever had a time when you thought, maybe God isn't even there, dealing with doubts? I think as humans, we all have moments of doubt and
yeah,
wondering.
Absolutely, yes, yeah, yeah, obviously. It's something that we have experienced, thinking, and even our kids. And usually you have these doubts when you're younger, or when you start read and and knowing more and experience more your religion, you have doubts. And these doubts are good, by the way, because the more you have doubts, the more you read more, and the more you know the truth, But yes, I had doubts that what if God even, this is something that doesn't exist even, and we just made it up.
We're sure spending a lot of time.
I had that, and this always led us to read more. Mm-hmm. Not only about our religion, but different religions,
Interesting. Anything that I should ask, but I don't know to ask you, that you would love to say about your personal relationship with God?
Yeah, there's some moments that you don't feel like you're getting what you want, and you're you just in your mind, you're just I want it, and I want it now. I want it now. This,
yes.
This feeling, And then after some period of time, it comes, And you always say, yeah, it's God. God is there. He listens to me, but he decides that he's going to give me that wish or this thing, but at the right time. So we will get it, but at the right time. Or even if we're not going to get it, this is probably good for you. And yeah, it happened to me, without mentioning detail. But yeah, I prayed for something, and it just it took forever. Not forever. I mean, it just took us
yes.
Took me some time to be answered, my prayer to be answered. And when this prayer was answered, it was answered perfectly. It was just even more than I prayed for. So this makes me have more faith in God and what he keeps for me and good for me and my family. But we always pray. We always pray because I feel we human are greedy. We always ask for too much. Not materialistic, but just we love to ask. And by the way, we believe in our religion that God wants us to ask him more. He wants us to keep asking him because this will keep us close to him.
Interesting.
Yeah.
Yes.
So he wants us, they say ask me and I will answer you. Pray for something, I'm going to answer you.
Shereen Salah, a pleasure to speak with you. Thank you for speaking with us in good faith.
Thank you.
Thank you for tuning in to In Good Faith. In the second half of the show, we'll explore the meaning of Azan, or Muslim call to prayer, and a panel of engaged listeners will discuss some of the ideas presented by Shereen Salah. Back in a moment, In Good Faith. This is In Good Faith, listening to first-person accounts and stories of faith and belief. In the first half of the show, we heard an interview with Shereen Salah. Among other ideas, she mentioned the feeling of comfort and inspiration she feels when she hears the call to prayer echoing from many places when she's in a Muslim city. Shereen is a teacher of Arabic at the university level, so I decided to ask Sage Smiley, one of Shereen's students majoring in journalism and Arabic, to help us understand the meaning of the call to prayer.
Allahu Akbar, Allahu Akbar.
Sage, you must have had that very same moment, whether you were in Jordan or Qatar, to hear that call all over the city.
Definitely. One of my favorite experiences was sitting at the Citadel in the middle of Amman and listening to all of the mosques have the azan, the call to prayer at the same time. It's a really moving experience.
5 times a day.
Yeah. It moves the rhythm of life over there.
Well, I wonder if you'll share with us, if you wouldn't mind, reading the lines in Arabic. I know they're repeated twice when they're sung, but if you would share them, read them in Arabic and then the line in English.
Absolutely. So the first thing that you hear is probably the most famous line. It's Allahu Akbar, which means God is great. And then after that is the line Ashhadu anna la ilaha illallah, which means that there is no other God but God. Then it says Ashhadu anna Muhammadan Rasul Allah, which means I bear witness that Muhammad is the messenger of God. Then after that, Hayya ala Salah, which means hurry to prayer. Come quickly, it's time to pray. And then Hayya ala al-falah, which means hurry to success or rise up for salvation. After that, they say Allahu Akbar 2 more times. And then La ilaha illallah. And then in the morning, this is kind of ironic, in the morning they add on the end of that, As-salatu khayrun min an-nawm, which means prayer is better than sleep. And I can say from personal experience, I'm not sure I felt that all the time when I would wake up at 4:30 in the morning and hear the call to prayer, but those are the words of the call to prayer.
And you mentioned the rhythm of life, so that daily activities are planned around these calls.
It depends on how orthodox of a Muslim you are if you're going to pray 5 times a day. But yes, there are breaks in university. Teachers will take breaks if they're going to pray 5 times a day. People will wake up, like I said, at 4:30ish in the morning. I mean, it depends on the time of year, but 4:30ish in the morning to pray, and then we'll either go back to sleep or just go straight to work. And so really life is structured around these calls to prayer.
Allahu Akbar, Allahu Akbar. La ilaha illallah.
Prayer. Reading holy books, singing, serving, so many ways to access the divine. Which ways reach you or help you reach God? We invited several people to listen to the interview with Shereen Salah in the first half of the show and then share their thoughts. Marcus Smith grew up in Southern California, is a musician, a gardener, a radio professional, and above all, a husband and father. Marvin Payne is an actor, guitar picker, and writer who lives in a cabin in Alpine, Utah. Tiffany Esplin is from Coeur d'Alene, Idaho. She's a horse lover and is 1 semester away from graduating with her MBA. Mark Burns is originally from Buffalo, New York, moved to Utah to teach at BYU. He works at BYU Broadcasting and is the host of the Special Collection show on BYU Radio. Our panel listened to Shereen Salah, then talked about the ideas she shared.
Shereen talked about when she felt closest to God, and that really spoke to me because I think about this very same question a lot. And in fact, I think sometimes maybe the question is even more important than the answer. When do I feel closest to God? She seemed to be closest or feel closest when she was really participating in two specific ways. She talked about prayer being one of them, and the other when listening to the recitation of Scripture, the Quran, in her life. As soon as I heard that, I realized that there are times in my life when I'm just sitting there wishing God would kick in and be there for me, when I'm really doing nothing about it. I'm not actively pursuing it. Those are very active, at least mentally, those are active things that she's doing when she feels closest. And I suppose that's instructive for me, that I need to not just wait for that spiritual thing to happen in my life, but I can actually do something to set the conditions that might be the right conditions for God to work on me.
I would add as well to what you just said that I thought it was interesting how when she talks about prayer and reading the Quran, that it's not as solitary, it seems, as it might be in my own particular faith or in most Christian faiths. She kept stressing community as well, that one of the things that brings her closer to God is doing the same kind of worship at the same time with, a group of people as well that all are kind of like-minded believers. And there was something about creating that kind of community that seemed to be crucial for her in terms of feeling what you were talking about.
She talked about community a lot, but she didn't, in doing so, in any way diminish the private prayer experience too. She goes there a lot.
I was I don't know much about Islam, but I was impressed by the private, personal aspects that she was discussing and sharing with us, I think, courageously and clearly and beautifully. But I was really taken with this community focus. It began with, I believe, her celebrating the Sabbath, how that was such a gathering sort of a thing. It made me think about my understanding of the Sabbath and how all of a sudden, oh yes, that gathering is precious. But that opens up an interesting question for me that came into my mind as she was describing the beauty of being in a Muslim environment where you hear the call to prayer 5 times a day, and that everybody that hears that has a response to it, and ideally that response is a common response and something that everybody shares. And I was challenged as an American because we work studiously to avoid ceremonies that seek to unite people on the basis of a common faith, because that tends to, we think of that as exclusive, excluding people, alienating people.
Or maybe there's just the rugged individualism of the American character, where we prize that, and our heroes are often just really strong individuals.
Well, yeah, but transcending or perhaps corroborating that the folk valence of that is the Constitution, and I just thought how. I think that if I were to visit a Muslim country, that call to prayer would not alienate me. It would not exclude me. I wouldn't feel excluded. I think that I'd feel called to prayer, maybe not to fall into that particular or to conform to that particular method of prayer, but to take a moment and say, oh yes, I'm a child of God. I need to consider that for a moment, whether I actually pray or not. It's just that 5 times a day reminder. And the question that arose for me was, is there something we can hold in common as Americans and not fear to celebrate, not fear to exclude, not fear to alienate, or not fear to violate the spirit of the Constitution.
I want to pick up on that just briefly, which is that she talked about an interesting tension between sort of the call to conformity versus the individual impulse. She talked about her schools. She said her parents would teach her this. Her schools would usually teach the same thing. And yet when she had doubts, she wanted to read more and study more and sort this out, to sift it out. I think every child across the globe will inherit the cultural or the religious or the collective wisdom of its community, and then have to come to terms with the fact that they are actually an individual within the community, and they might differ. They might have doubts, and they're going to have to sift and sort it out. And that tension seems inevitable, whether I'm Muslim or Mormon or Catholic or whatever I may believe. People will want to present me with, do this now. It's prayer time, or the call to church, or whatever it is. The expectation that I will conform at some level. And as you grow up, maybe this is adolescence. I don't know. It's just human adolescence. You get a little resistant, and you have to think, well, I'm going to read up on this. I'm going to see if this is really for me. And so I sometimes wonder if that isn't a universal reaction to just social expectation. And religion is no stranger to imposing social expectations. She hinted at that. She celebrates it, though, as you were saying, Marvin. She does celebrate it.
I also think the culture plays a big impact on how we feel about ourselves and our beliefs. And specifically, when she mentioned she was scared about moving to Utah, Utah is very cultural based. It's very strong in religion, and I, as a single older person, experienced that cultural, almost, I can't think of the word, but
Dissonance.
Pressure?
Yeah, cultural pressure, dissonance. I related a lot to her anxiety about the possibility of being alienated because of who she was. Not just her religion, but because of she's an outsider. And I think as Americans, as people of different faiths, we need to be sensitive to different circumstances, because that can really affect not only religion, but it can affect a human being and their life and how they feel about themselves, how they participate in the community. All of those things can affect. So I think what I gathered from her, just her brief mention of her anxiety about coming to Utah, was she wanted to be valued as an individual, not because she was Muslim, not because she was married, not because she had children, but she wanted to be valued because of who she is and her contributions to society and to people in general.
She handed us a grand key that would help us to enable us to do that effectively, which was the distinction between the religion and the culture, which she didn't present as any kind of she didn't present it as a grand key. She just presented it as a discovery of her own that she needed at a certain point to look for the distinction between her religion and her culture. And it seems to me that would be pretty good advice to take.
I agree.
And the fact that she was willing right from the start, when she was speaking with Steve, to talk about certain things are foundational, that sort of gives the idea that the religion is not a mishmash. The religion is very specific, and there's some things you're going to hold dear, and yet there are these sort of accretions, or there are these add-ons that we pile on. And do I see that in my religious experience, where I can be at church one day and realize somebody sitting next to me thinks of something as foundational that I consider to be really very peripheral. And then I have the problem of feeling like the outsider, maybe like she does in Utah, the problem like, well, what am I going to do with this now? Because I can't necessarily just buy into everything the culture's offering me.
Yeah.
I like that she encouraged searching. She said the doubts that she had motivated her to search and to study. And I think that's also really good, sound advice, because just like you were talking about different cultural implications on the foundational principles, but people who are outside of those, that's their golden ticket, is to study out for themselves and figure out what their foundation is.
She used the verb to read which I thought, she said that when it was time for me to really sort this out as I was growing up, she said I would read more. She said that multiple times. I would read more. And it makes me wonder, what do you choose to read? To what sources of potential information? For her, clearly, she heard the recitation of Scripture, of Quran, from her father, and that's a beautiful image. At 5 o'clock in the morning, hearing him do his reading aloud as a child. I suppose we all come with a sort of baseline of, I'll call it indoctrination, where we inherit from either parents or from authority figures, the school, from the society. We inherit what is kind of baseline, and then it's time to read, according to her. And I'm very fond of that. I remember growing up and having doubts, and if it wasn't about Santa Claus, maybe it was about, really, I'm supposed to give money to my church? Money is hard earned. I have my doubts, that kind of thing.
I thought her whole response to the issue of doubt was just so grown up, so non-adolescent. And I'm going to characterize adolescent as rebelling, as sort of savoring forbidden options. Whereas for her, the doubt motivated her to, well, she was doubting her doubts rather than doubting her faith.
So her doubts were not an excuse just for acting out the way a teenager might.
Yes, it was a motivation to explore the faith.
Yeah, like something that should be embraced instead of feared in some ways.
Yeah, that believing is a higher good than not believing. Just that basic idea.
You're listening to a conversation in good faith with a panel of listeners sharing their thoughts after hearing an interview in the first half of today's show with Shereen Salah from Egypt. Now back to the conversation.
I'd be interested in knowing what y'all think about her emphasis on religions all worshiping the same God but from a different angle. She's talked about we all sort of abide by the same basic good rules or rules of goodness. Yeah, I'd be really interested in hearing what you have to say, because we come together to have a conversation about faith, and I think any normal person would want to find something in common with somebody else rather than just to be alienated from them.
Well, C.S. Lewis asserted something that united people of all persuasions and cultural backgrounds was a sense of common decency. Common decency was this idea that he thought was kind of innate, and I think different belief systems might give that common decency a name, a spiritual name. I know that my faith would give it a name. That's part of my particular articles of faith. But that common decency, Lewis felt like it was there in everybody, and I wonder if that. If that could be the thing that we could celebrate and ring bells about and have a call to the celebration of common decency 5 times a day, to actually execute that is logistically problematic. But just the idea of believing in something that we can all believe, that we can all say, yes, that's good, and agree on, and start there and somehow celebrate.
Well, you've given an example of that when you said that if you were living in a place like Cairo and you heard the call to prayer, you would see it as a summons that you could take personally, even if you didn't necessarily pray according to that method.
Yeah.
I think our human tendency is often less charitable than seeing how that call could speak to you from a different faith.
Well, perhaps, and I feel like I am biased by the Constitution, which says, don't exclude anybody, not only freedom of religion, but freedom from religion, and sort of honoring that at all costs. It just seems like that. It's a critical freedom. It's a vital freedom, and it's one that I think the Lord inspired to be there. But it is a real limiting freedom in some ways, in terms of really creating and enjoying community and an association and a celebration of of common values, like the Sabbath does, or like the call to prayer does, in an environment where it's okay to kind of publicly celebrate your faith.
Yeah, I would love to believe that that's true for the United States, but I don't know if that's exactly what she's pointing to, because as you were talking, it just occurred to me that she's got this great emphasis on community, but it's really a community of like-minded Muslims, kind of in the middle of a bigger community. So I guess that community can still be a part, right, of a national whole of people worshiping like they want to without persecuting others, for doing what they do.
Or choosing not to worship at all, if the case be.
But I do think it's a community of Muslims that she's talking about that's so we're saying the same thing probably, just in different ways. But
I would just say that she also talked about visiting in her LDS community, the Mormon Relief Society, that organization of women where she's invited to participate socially, and she did that wholeheartedly.
And yet you know that at that gathering there will be deep expressions of faith.
And the presence of a sense of insider, outsider, no matter how hard you try to come together?
Well, yeah. I'm grasping at what she might enjoy spiritually at her
And she
society.
is too, and I think that's the point. She goes into that looking for society, looking for community among religious strangers or people with religious differences. Her mindset, to me, clearly is one of an openness, a gesture of openness towards things that are different. Not to say that she's going to adopt wholesale what other people believe or think, but she wants to rub shoulders.
She's looking for commonality instead of the difference. And she's focusing on the good of the people and the other religions rather than, at least this is my assumption, rather than the differences and magnifying the differences and thinking they're negative. She's looking for those nuggets that she can relate to and enjoy in her new community.
And her husband even reassured her before she came here, saying, it's going to be okay.
Yeah.
You're going to find a welcome here. Because he came first, right, in the story, that she came over to the United States after.
So it occurs to me that what she might really be seeking, right, is not so much community within a Muslim kind of subgroup, but communities, plural, that she feels clear joy, and I assume a kind of a spiritual feeling when she participates with other Mormon women in this kind of community. And then there's a different kind of community as well that worships on Saturdays, on her Sabbath. And it might be her ability to move between communities and to feel at home in multiple communities that in some ways is the reason that she appears to be so happy.
And doesn't that fit right well with her job as a translator, to have a passport between communities?
Something that seems fundamental about this whole program is the exploration of why somebody believes, why they believe, not even so much why they believe what they do, but why they believe. Why do they have faith? Why do they choose faith? And something that I'm sort of feeling real warm fuzzies about down inside is that as I consider her expression of faith and the things that she shared, she didn't say why she believed. She just said, well, my father was an influence, and then I went to school, and that was an influence. And I mean, the fact that she does believe was very clear. She clearly said that, but she didn't talk much about why she believes. I think that I'm gonna guess. I feel that why she believes is that she's good, and prizes good, and is looking for good, and I just wonder, as we look around at people who might believe differently than we do, how it might help us to consider, wait, they believe the way they do because they're good. They believe, period, because they're good, because they are reaching for good.
I think that was most manifest to me when she was talking about praying, that people are hoping for something, and then she said, or hoping for something for someone who is dear to you.
Yeah. That's
the outward compassion for the benefit of others. It's not self-serving at all. That's the goodness you're talking about.
Yeah, that says goodness. I mean, that just bears testimony. You can't bear testimony of your own goodness, but she kind of did. inadvertently and unintentionally, simply by stating what she believes. It just reveals so much goodness about her. And all of a sudden, well, why does she believe as she believes? Well, it becomes irrelevant because that's why.
You know, another thing, you mentioned we don't really know why she believes necessarily. I mean, at least she's not explicit about it. But one thing that really struck me as she was talking was how personal God is for her. I think because I don't know a ton about Islam, when she began to talk, I was surprised that the God that she worships is someone who designs particular experiences for her and who can be accessed through prayer and who's listening to her when she prays. And that there's something about the rituals of Islam that when she enters into them as part of a community, she clearly has a kind of a personal connection with God that, again, I feel like an idiot admitting this, but I just didn't know that that's how Muslims necessarily thought of God. I thought that was more of a Christian kind of approach in some ways. But she just taught me that, no, I mean, her religion helps her to feel the presence of a personal God who knows her and loves her and is directing her life, in many ways.
Even if the road there is somewhat obscure and you don't see it till well after the fact. I mean, she made a big point of that, didn't she, Tiffany? Mm-hmm. That sometimes you don't know it's a good thing that's happened to you until way down the road. And then in retrospect, you can say, oh, God was working in my interests.
I like how she said that he leads her choices. She believes he leads her choices. And sometimes it gets really hard and she wonders, what in the world? Why is this happening? And then it's the after where she's like, oh yeah, I see God's hand in this now. And I could resonate with that a lot because there's often times where I'm going through turmoil or whatever. And then after the fact, I see the grand design of, okay, that makes sense now. But in the midst of it, it's hard to focus on that.
And I would say that the greatest challenge to people's faith on this point comes when they feel that they're just one of billions of people. Mm-hmm. And whatever your faith, whatever your religious background, whatever your upbringing, the idea that a God could be concerned specifically, particularly about my needs and hopes and dreams, that's a big pill to swallow. And I think a lot of religious people, in my experience, in my observation, that becomes just a bedrock premise. They just march forward with, well, God does care about me, and I'm just going to go forward, and I'm going to pray to him, and he's going to help me because that's what God does. He loves me and knows me personally. Or that particularity, that's huge faith. And when I have my doubts, that's often where I feel subverted. When I'm wondering, is God there for me particularly?
It's huge faith, but it may not be universal. I think there's a kind of a happy development here that Shereen and I think the people at this table happen to agree on this whole thing of that God does relate to us personally and is conscious of us. But there's a whole world of believers who may not actually believe that, who worship and celebrate and revere a divine creator.
But they wouldn't see God micromanaging events in their own individual lives.
Or even conscious of their individual lives. Just,
right.
I've made this thing because I am good. I am the sum of all good. I have made this thing for you. Enjoy it.
And now I'll step out of the way as it just kind of runs itself.
Yes,
For the next several millennia.
Yeah, as it runs itself, or just to see how you do. This is my gift to you. So celebrate me from time to time. Believe in me.
Clearly, there's room for that because people think differently, and some people will see a God who is invested in the individual outcomes of individuals' lives. She, for her part, it seemed like a bedrock thing for her. It may not have been one of the 5 pillars of Islam, but she is instructed among those things that she's supposed to pray. Prayer is a pillar, and she's made prayer intensely personal, it seems, as well as communal and celebratory with her community.
In which I find great comfort and great linkage with Shereen. But just as we consider the whole world of faith, we might be probably in a majority, but still not.
It's not universal, is it?
Yeah, and I don't know that that's a requirement to be a believing person.
I will say that although that's not a requirement to be a believing person, that, boy, I wish I was more like her. I mean, that sense of one-on-one relationship with God seems to be really meaningful for her. And that's the kind of relationship I kind of wish I had more of than
it's
she
irresistible.
does. It really is. And Islam is the last place I would have guessed would help you to develop that kind of relationship. I mean, I don't know if she's unusual in that way or if she's typical of many other people in her faith. I'm guessing the latter. And I find it to be just kind of astounding, personally, that you could, have a religion, raise someone like Shereen in it, and by the time she's middle-aged or however old she is, what comes out the other end of the entire process is this caring, committed person who feels such a close relationship with the God that she worships every weekend.
Well, having read the Quran, it does lead its readers in that direction.
That's our time for today. Thanks to our panelists, and especially to Shereen Salah for her thoughtfulness and generosity in sharing with us. In Good Faith is committed to the idea that we all benefit from hearing people of widely varying backgrounds tell about their personal experience with faith and belief. In fact, we think people with such experience deserve some of our best listening. We hope you found value in today's conversation, and we welcome your thoughts and ideas about the program. Reach out to us anytime via email, ingoodfaith@byu.edu. Find all of our shows archived online for listening and sharing at byuradio.org/ingoodfaith. I'm Stephen Cap Perry. I hope you'll join with us again soon, right here in Good Faith.